Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our show. And as a surprise, you have seen that unfortunately today our friendly video has taken the freedom to make its own carnival approach, such as that it's out of working order and that it doesn't like to appear and change and charge and go online. So no trouble at all. We are very happy on Carnival, Faschingsdienstag, to welcome you on your screens with another interesting episode where we have a very special guest today. We have chatted on several occasions already with him on dedicated exchange of know-how, asked him several interesting questions on artificial intelligence and how one can make things work. And today we have the special honor that Jan Schoenmakers is our special guest. Hi, Jan. Welcome you.
Moin. Welcome. Moin. Nice to see you all. Thanks for inviting me.
Our pleasure, and sorry that our friend from the internet and the connectivity with my friends in Deutsche Telekom did have a little challenge so that we could not stream our intro properly.
You know what the problem is? It's just not AI operated.
With Thank AI, you very much.
Problem.
Jan, a solution so near.
Microsoft. What could go wrong?
See, I was prepared to blame it on Thomas not being here, but this is even
better. I would have gone with, I'm always fiddling with the wrong knobs, but the rest of our broadcast is live and cool. We are on in LinkedIn, we are on Facebook. So this is what I checked with my right eye. And now I would like to kick it off as AI is the topic of today. And it starts with the heading, AI made in Germany, winning the hedgehog style. That, Jan, has to be explained, but please, it would be most charming if you introduce yourself a bit and then we go for the company's name and a fairy tale.
Sounds like a sweet idea for an entertaining evening. Well, I'm Jan. I'm a founder and managing partner of HASE IGEL, which translates to Hare and Hedgehog. Befitting for Carnival, I'm two animals all at once, and I might even be human on top of that. You guys gonna find out over the next hour. I run an AI company, but I'm not from AI. I'm not even from IT, so I don't have any reasonable right to be here, right? I come from the marketing, communications, and sales side of things, and I've spent about 15 years as a manager, getting increasingly annoyed that there's no good AI, big data analytics tech stack out there for market cultivation. Like if I want to optimize a production facility, I have tons of AI solutions for like predictive maintenance and everything. If I want to, do flash trading, I have tons of applications. But if I want to optimize advertising or plan product or allocate the right quantity of products and of budgets to different locations and whatever, right? There's nothing. There's like tons of software as a service offers that are more or less dashboards that visualize something, but there's nothing that really helps me analyze and understand things and get actionable insights, get recommendations for actions. And that's pretty much what I decided building with HASE IGEL. And as I can't write a single line of code, well, maybe a line or two of BASIC or HTML, but nothing worth speaking of, I found really, really brilliant people to work for me and work with me and make that dream come true. So HASE IGEL, we're not selling animals. not even animal nutrition. So why the hell are we called Hase and Igel? Well, it boils down to a German fairy tale. Now, kill me, but I don't know if it's like Andersen or Grimm. It's a German fairy tale nonetheless, and it's about like a hare and a hedgehog. And the hare hops over to the hedgehog and challenges him to a race, because obviously he needs to bolster his ego, because he's the obvious favorite. He's like taller and faster and everything. Still, the hedgehog ends up winning. Why? Because he extrapolates where the hare is going to run, which route the hare is going to take, and he coordinates with other hedgehogs, so they just place themselves along strategic points of the route and tell the hare, well, hi, I'm there already. The hare is so busy running, being the first, he doesn't even notice it's different hedgehogs. For him, they all look the same. So he just runs until he drops, totally exhausted. The hedgehogs, they haven't spent one single calorie, and still they've won because they've had good predictive analytics. They understood the rules of the game, they understood the intention of the hare, and they knew which route he'd likely take. So this is the hedgehog side of things. However, the fairy tale's called Hare and Hedgehog. So where does the hare fit in? Basically, he's on the butt end of the joke. But for our company, it's not. It's an integral part, because the hedgehog won in the fairy tale because his prediction was right. Well, not all predictions are right, not even ours. No predictions are. It's just impossible to be right all the time. So what you need to play the big data AI game is, on the one hand, really good predictive analytics, but on the other hand, you also need a radar that tells you when things do happen to emerge differently from what you expected. And then you have to react really, really swiftly, like a hare would, changing direction in an instant, outpacing and outsmarting competition, because you understood that maybe your prediction wasn't right because something disruptive happened in the meantime. For example, some bloke invaded some other bloke's country, and suddenly everything changes. So you need to take this into account and change your route. And that's the hare part of things. So that's Hare and Hedgehog, and that's us.
That's a cool description, especially the last one, such as a winning pair, not as competitors, but as a united team to do something useful for customers, potential customers, existing customers, or in the general approach. Smartness. Be smarter, not harder.
That's what our ad agency told us. In the beginning, we were always like, yeah, hedgehog style. And then they told us, you got to have the hare be a hero too. And we were like, that's a brilliant idea. I wish we would have had it, but that's what that's what you hire ad agencies for, right?
Yeah. And besides, hedgehogs aren't nearly as cuddly as hares are.
The interesting
in the same way,
right? But the interesting aspect is the combination of both makes it so interesting. So we have covered how the name of the company has been created, which is cool. And I'm curious because from our previous talks, I know that you have been not only a manager, you have also been a journalist. And that makes Marshall smile because now he knows a bit about your background. Could you tell us a bit more where you have been around in journalism, and is Hare and Hedgehog, Hase and Igel, your first company, or is it a successful approach, a more successful approach than your earlier exercises in solopreneurship or enterprising have been? As I commit, I have tried it 3 times, and now in the 3rd time, it looks like I'm making it.
Well, that's the secret. You got to fake it till you make it.
And now we know.
But well,
we're giving it away for free, man.
Yeah, that's how I am, always generous. But yeah, my career in journalism wasn't much to speak of, really. It wasn't very glorious because it was really short. When I was still in high school and right after I'd finished high school, I was working for the local newspaper, and I was quite good at that. So I got promoted really quick. And even though I didn't have any degree or anything, I was an editor and I had my own page, and I was set to become a senior editor and stuff. And I thought journalism is exactly my thing, because I'm a curious and data-driven guy, and I'm fairly political. And it looked like, in journalism, you can, do research and look at the data, and you get to satisfy your curiosity, but you can also make an impact by revealing things, by discussing things. It sounded like a sweet deal. It was really not a good paycheck. Anyone who's ever been in journalism knows that when you start, it sucks. Frequently, it keeps sucking. Sometimes it gets better when your career advances. But I mean, I was young. I really didn't care. But then I noticed that journalism, as we knew it, is just about to go belly up, because the newspaper I worked at, they didn't even switch to desktop publishing in time. They made like everything, manually, and like in print. They didn't have any idea how the internet might impact their business, or how you could even use the internet as a journalist and as an outlet for journalism. And I wasn't an online expert or anything. I mean, I'm a digital immigrant like everybody else in this call. But I understood that I was young enough to understand that things are going to change dramatically, and that this business model is running out of fuel fast. And none of the editors, the publishers, or the fellow journalists I talked to had a clue on what to do. And I was like, damn, do I really want to start my career in a field that's going to be disrupted, and nobody even really recognizes it's going to be disrupted, and nobody really has a clue on what to do about that? So I switched to the dark side of things, and they're like, okay, where's the money at, and where is like a bit more of a business plan? And then I understood that you got to look in corporate communications, public affairs, etc. And I went to college and to grad school and studied that kind of stuff, and worked in PR and advertising. But journalism has stuck with me ever since. I still keep publishing pieces in various journals and newspapers now and then, but I'm definitely not a journalist. It's more like a passion that I pursue on the side, and I don't consider myself a seasoned professional in journalism. I'm more of a passionate amateur, and I still really, really hope that journalism will find a sustainable business model before it's too late, because the whole faster than the internet clickbaiting bullshit most publishers are doing now, it's not sustainable in the least. It's just gonna have Google and Facebook and Amazon, etc., end up winning, and journalism left in the dust. And that hurts. It hurts me as an amateur of journalism, and it hurts democracy. But I still would probably choose the same career, because if I would enter journalism nowadays with a sense for business, I'm not sure whether I would see much of a big business opportunity there, the way it is run today.
It's a shame.
Marshall, how do you see the development of journalism?
I mostly have to agree with Jan. Unfortunately, the market desire for more news, and I put news in quotes because it's just noise, but the desire for more of it on a 24-hour cycle means that there is less quality in what is reported. And there's also the catering to smaller and smaller groups within larger cohorts, so that you have your echo chambers. Journalism is not what it used to be. Reporting is not what it used to be. Unfortunately, for those of us who love it, it's still a way of digesting and transferring information that's very important, but nobody's interested in it anymore.
Well, at least nobody's interested in paying up for it. That's the problem. I mean, people still value good content, but nobody wants to spend a penny on it.
It's
But I
true.
think that might change with the disruption that we see triggered by the likes of ChatGPT in the content space, in the research and content creation, content marketing space, because that whole 24/7 creation of noise news is going to be automated in no time at all. And there's not going to be much room left for humans in there, which means either everybody loses their jobs, or those who want to keep their jobs will focus on high quality, man-made, handmade, well-researched, fact-check, quality-check news. And I mean, there's certainly a smaller market for that, particularly when it's comparatively expensive. But I think there is a market, and it's going to be much more important. There's going to be an emerging premium market, because the mainstream market in a couple of years, or maybe even in a couple of months, will suck even far worse than it does today, with a full automation that's right on the doorstep.
That is an interesting observation you two sharing, especially when I recall a research I did 3 years ago when I analyzed automated text generating systems, which were before ChatGPT in its development. It is right now and has been frozen in and is for public, but systems which were so-called author systems, which you paid for a certain amount of money. And especially if you go for sports news, you find a certain automated similarity, how the texts look alike and are sounding, even that they are not and they're not spoken words, but you read them, but you see the mock-up, such as FC St. Pauli is playing against FC Rossbach. They won such and such, and they name some players' names, and this is an automated process. I found several smaller newspapers which couldn't afford any longer on one side to pay the agencies such as American Press, German Press Agency, or others to get their named resources, but found others to stuff their pages to a certain degree, and they used automated content. Yeah,
they all do. Also, the big ones for the standardized reporting on stuff like stock exchange news, or public companies publishing their annual reports. Sports, as you said, weather, all that kind of stuff. If it's high level, high profile, if it's the annual results of Pfizer or something, then you're sure that they'll have a reporter covering it. But if it's some B or C league company, nobody invests that amount of effort anymore. It's all automated analysis of their annual reports of the stock tickers, and then it's automated content creation. It's not even AI for the most part, because most companies who provide this kind of automation just have sort of a bit more elaborate thesaurus behind it. It's basically just a database of different synonyms to, and you got your formulas how data can relate, like how one team can win or lose against the other team, or they can end up even, and then you just got to insert the numbers and the names of the teams. You don't need AI for that.
That's very interesting. Yeah. And I would like to dig in a bit more in depth, but first I would like to know how you made up your mind to go into the uneasiness of being an entrepreneur and leave the comfort zone of a regular paycheck, like it happened to me some years ago as well. But it happened to me, such as I was laid off, instead of I made the own choice of going for something new. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that feeling too. So let's commiserate. How did you wind up?
It sounds a bit like Entrepreneurs Anonymous. It's like, hi, I'm Ralph, I'm an entrepreneur. Hi.
Yeah.
Well, I actually made that step deliberately, and it wasn't easy. In hindsight, everybody told me it was really crazy beer. Ex-girlfriends from my time in high school told me I always knew you'd gonna be an entrepreneur. I was like, really? It's I didn't. And you haven't seen me in like 20 years. It's like interesting, but I couldn't see that coming. In hindsight, I can definitely see it coming because I've always come up with like more or less original own ideas and try to like put them into practice, be it in music or politics or social stuff or entrepreneurship. I paid for my studies in part with little makeshift enterprises I built for like, silly stuff like guerrilla marketing or direct sales, stuff like that. I never thought about myself as an entrepreneur. I just wanted to, get a decent return on investment. But then when I started working in regular jobs, I understood that I really had a hard time accepting authority that is not, and that sounds horribly arrogant to say, professionally justified. I have no problem at all, being junior to a head of department or to a CEO or whatever. If I can look up to him, if he's taking risks that I don't and that I wouldn't. So there's a reason he's up there and I'm down here, or he knows a lot of things I could never know. And how does he know these things? How does he do these things? And I can learn from him. That's perfect. I have no problem being on like the mentee side of a mentor-mentee relationship, but working for someone who doesn't seem to know much more than I do and who doesn't take the responsibilities he allegedly has in his job description, but usually delegates them. He just keeps the perks and delegates the risks. It's like I really found that hard to swallow, and I never could adjust to it. And having worked in a major corporation, I found that it doesn't become easier over time, particularly not as you progress in your career and you're sort of expected to play along in that, pass on the blame game. That's not how I tick, and it got increasingly annoying. So I always started my own side hustles, and HASE IGEL is my fourth serious venture that I started, like leaving aside like the little student stuff. And the first three, they all were commercially more or less successful. They didn't go bankrupt. They didn't make me rich, but they didn't go bankrupt. But they didn't turn out to be as fun as I thought they would be. They would be, they were much more work and much less fun or gratification or purpose than I wanted to have. Because if you take all those risks, you want to have the perks too, right? And that never quite leveled out. So I always sold my shares or closed down the business and went back to or stuck with my corporate jobs. But over time, it just became so annoying that I dreamed about nothing else. And my wife, in the end, told me, we were taking a walk at it was like minus 30 degrees Celsius in the Austrian Alps. We were skiing, we were taking a walk at night on New Year's Eve. And she told me, hey, you got to do it this year. And I was like, oh man, we got children, we got a house, and she was earning money too, but I was earning more money, and there was we need the money. What are we going to do if it doesn't come to fruition? And I would feel bad. And she was like, yeah, and it would suck, but if you don't do it, you're going to turn into an asshole, and that would suck far more. Okay, I can see that point. And 8 weeks later, I quit my job and jumped into the cold water, and it turned out it hadn't been that cold. It really hadn't been. Even the first year, I made a solid profit, and I earned more money than I did in my corporate job. And after the first 2 or 3 weeks, I had my first clients, and I didn't even have a proper business plan or anything. I had no clue. I was just I started and I see what happens. And it just turned out that I had the right idea at the right time, but that was sheer luck. I was basically doing it out of necessity, of inner necessity, because I just couldn't put up with the corporate stuff any longer. And I found out that, even in 5 years or 10 years, I will never be able to adjust to that, corporate hierarchy thing, which is entirely different from what you see in entrepreneurship. There's also sort of a hierarchy of entrepreneurs, but that's usually meritocratic. It's based on success and on know-how. You respect, you want to win, but you still respect if your competitor ends up, being more successful in the market, and as long as they play fair. if
Yeah.
they don't, do any shady deals or try to, form a illegal trust or cartel or something like that. If they play by the rules and they win, you respect that. And you know that, okay, maybe you think you're smart or you're better, but in the end, the market proved that they were more right than you were. And there's frustration, but not much bitterness in that. It's an entirely different thing from having to accept an incompetent boss in a big corporation.
Yeah, good entrepreneurs learn from one another, whereas in the corporate world, you follow orders more often.
And
or try to form the right alliances to it, get yourself in with the hip crowd and propel your career.
And what we learned through the pandemic is that virtual teams and working from anywhere and working together over oceans is a combination where you can deliver at fair prices services you never dreamed and imagined on. And that is going into the next area, such as you survived what a lot of people are very afraid of, the Death Valley period of the startup, such as no water, no food, and a long of desert up front of me. You sound so relaxed and quite happy that you've taken the road, but was it without areas of discomfort?
I just had to think of that scene in The Big Lebowski when Lebowski's daughter asks the dude, it's like, how do you put up with all that shit? And he pours himself a drink, lights himself a joint, me like, it's by strictly adhering to my drug regimen. Or I think he even says a well-balanced drug regimen.
Interesting.
Well, that wasn't exactly the road I took. No, well, I knew what I was up for, right? It wasn't the first time. So I had no illusions about how it would be. And it turned out to be a rocky road, but much less rocky than I had expected. So I came up stressed out, but somewhat relieved, and even feeling blessed in a way, that because it was like, well, yeah, damn, somehow it always turned out all right.
You found yourself doing
very encouraging.
You're doing what's right for you, and that always feels good. The fact that you were making money at it couldn't hurt.
Yeah, but we were really good at making money from day one. Like, I started the company with 50,000 euros of my own money. And that's all that had ever been invested into HASE IGEL for the first roughly 5 years.
Wow.
We turned a profit pretty much from day one, and we had one single year where we didn't turn a net profit, not just an EBIT, but like a net profit. After it's like, I'm not a businessman. It's like, what is it after taxes? How is it called? Is it like just net profit or whatever? Well, obviously don't have
before tax. It's a lot more fun to look at the figures.
Yeah.
Afterwards, you are weeping.
Even after tax, it's always been a profit, except for 1 year, and there we've been in the red for like 350 euros. I think I could live with that. So I really wasn't tried too hard, and that helped, of course. But still, there were a lot of holy shit moments, good and bad, and like the bad ones, they do feel bad. Like at one point, all we had left in the bank was 7,000 euros, and I had several employees and no credit line and no investor, and because I'd never looked for one, it was like, well, I can do that on my own, and then it suddenly didn't turn out so well, but while I was still thinking about, am I going to invest more money, or do I have to lay off people, or like, what do I do with the situation? We got the next big client, and in the end it turned out to be a really good business year, even though the 7,000 euro situation was in July. So it's like more than half of the year had been over, and then the rest of the year saved the day. And I mean, that's how it always goes in entrepreneurship. I mean, even after years and years and years, but particularly in the beginning when you don't have much of a safety cushion, it's much more precarious, the regular ups and downs, because the downs hit you much harder than they would had you been able to put more money aside for meager times. And that
There
just
is
takes
no
nerve.
net, no
a lot of
safety
nerve.
belt. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I just, without wanting to sound cocky, I just have a lot of nerve. So I think I'm fairly well equipped for being an entrepreneur, because nerve isn't everything. But without nerve, you're never going to succeed, because you're really going to need it.
Yeah, without nerve, you're not even going to start. So
Yeah, well, no, I'm not sure, because there's a lot of, over the past couple of years, a lot of people have started because there was shitloads of VC money around. And for many, it seemed like an easy route to fame and money. And also there's more and more young entrepreneurs who just start out of a very rosy idealism. And I love these guys. It's great. And gals, it's great. Their impetus is great, their vision is great, but they don't have the faintest business case. They just think, like, if I'm gonna save the world now, everybody says we have to save the world. I found a business, I saved the world. Well, everybody's gonna love me for it, right? And then they find out what, like many people in like medical professions and other professions during COVID found out the hard way, like everybody applauds you up from the balcony, but that doesn't mean you're getting paid.
Yeah.
And
But-
sooner or later you have to.
Yeah.
If
Absolutely.
we're quoting, as long as we're quoting movies, there's the old, if you build it, they will come.
Oh, I love that movie. That's a
Yeah.
great one.
But
I think of that so
it's
frequently.
not really
Actually,
true,
I quote
though.
that regularly. That's one of my entrepreneurial maxims. I quote that regularly, that movie and that quote.
Yeah, if you build it, they will come, but you've got to market the hell out of it first.
Yeah. But, well, Kevin Costner, I mean, you gotta love that guy. And he made a couple of really brilliant movies. He made a couple of fairly shitty movies, but he always turned out to be a really good and passionate entrepreneur. He self-funded all his huge megalomaniac projects, including Dances with Wolves, and all the fuck-ups as well. And then he founded and invested in huge, documentary productions and solar farms and all kinds of other ventures, and most of them turned out successfully. And he's a very smart guy. Got to respect that.
Yeah. You can't
We
do
do.
an English accent to save his life, but a very smart guy.
Well, that's funny. I in school I learned British English, and then I went to Cambridge for a while, and then I studied in the US and had this weird mixture of British English and German accent. And I quickly found out that particularly in Missouri, people had much more problems with the British accent in my English than with the German accent. So I quickly got rid of the British accent.
And it became a bit more clearly that you are from Germany. Something like that.
I should have emphasized that more, because oddly enough, it earned me big bonus points in Missouri, because there's a lot of German heritage there. People will always be, "Oh, you're from Germany? That's so cool!" And then they had all those notions about Germany. Like, some of them were really outrageous, even like calling Germany a very sexually liberated country. And I won't delve into that any further. But it sounded cool when you're in college. It's like, nobody in Europe has ever said that about Germany and Germans. But
Yeah,
even like
Germany,
Germany
where the
is
party
cool
animals
in
go.
one phrase, that's like, damn, apparently I went to the right place.
Cool.
Never happened
Nice.
in California.
It's interesting to see that you, by taking one or the other road, you mostly have decided for the less bumpy roads, even that you have experienced the one or the other stock on highway where you probably could have run smoother on another one. But all in all, it looks like you made your way, which is fantastic.
Oh, and that brings me to another eternal favorite of mine, The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. That's beautiful. That's so beautiful.
Now we have the third movie quote.
Quite, it's more of a poem quote, but it's a great one.
But it turns up in movies all the time.
That's true.
Yeah.
I took the road less traveled by, and that made all the difference. But it's like, it wasn't as bumpy as I had expected, but it was definitely, it was, and it still is horribly high maintenance and high energy. And that's, I've always had a propensity for going the high energy and high effort road, because that's, I guess that I'm just a fairly impatient guy and I want to get things right. That must be that inherent stereotypic Germanness. And then I invest far too much energy to call myself, smart or smooth or anything. I could always have it much smoother and run things much more smartly, but I'm thinking, no, I push it through right now. We break on through to the other side. We're staying in the quote territory. But if you succeed before you drop, it means that the solution you're going to end up with is going to be awesome because you really thought it through and you invested a lot of energy in it. And that's always more sustainable than some half-baked, smooth, minimal effort, maximal output stuff. And people do notice that. If it's, with passion and with utmost attention to detail, sort of the Steve Jobs way of things, or if it's more or less, you can call it smart or you can call it cynical.
The interesting aspect is if you have experienced working for Swiss, if you have experienced working for Austrians, if you have worked with French, the Scandinavians, with Brits, with Americans, and then being a German, you find yourself in the middle of things, such as you are not over justificationing and nearly dying in perfection before you get a product to market, which is the Swiss attitude, such as if it's not 180% safe, secure, and sound, we don't walk on. Such as I wait sometimes felt from my stomach centuries till a project came to the market, whereas it is like green bananas going on to the market. If I take it in the American approach, the product will get ripe at the customer's side. Yeah. So we are just in the middle with the German attitude, I believe.
And that's actually, I haven't really thought about it that way, but it describes pretty well how we roll at HASE and IGEL, just not at German pace, but at a high speed pace. But that aside, we're innovating very, very fast, moving very, very fast, but with an equilibrium approach. We want to have great solutions, but with an emphasis on solution. Waiting until it's perfect, it doesn't solve anything in the meantime. As soon as it's ripe enough to deliver a solution, we'll market it, and then we keep improving on it. But it has to be a really good solution first. Then it's going to be put to the market, and then it's going to evolve at a very fast pace and become ever better. But the solution part, that's the crucial part. It has to create value for the customer, and it has to also to satisfy our need for closure. If we feel like, okay, we accepted challenge, we tackled it and we solved it, then we can close the file and put out the product. And then it's going to be improved and everything. But as long as it's still like, it's good for an MVP, let's make an open beta and whatever. That's not our approach. You got to be sure it delivers the goods.
That is the interesting approach.
Fast, it delivers the goods fast. If you wait too long, then people will have spent an unnecessary amount of time having problems.
It is very much in the approach what I would like to emphasize on as to be fair, to look for the customer's utilization and for its benefit. And then we have a fair justification about price. And then I would like to challenge you a bit on the general approaches people in the hyped AI environment are having, such as we see GAFA, we see especially ChatGPT being hyped from the OpenAI Foundation. We see a large investment from Microsoft in that area. We see even much invest of Amazon and of Google. And it looks like that what you said earlier, the respect for the success of another competitor, for instance, or just somebody who is participating in the market, is here coming to some style of race where we have a lot of, to stay in the picture, a lot of hares, but no smartness of the hedgehog style. Yeah. So there are a lot running, and there are a lot, they do a lot of action, and some could be seen as useful, but in all that race and hype, where do you see the potential of benefit in these companies I just quoted? And I was thinking in the preparation, especially on the perception of the benefit of AI.
Well, I mean, you can't blame GAFAM for taking the brute force approach, because that's pretty much all they can do nowadays. They used to be very disruptive and smart and fast, and now they're like huge tankers with enormous amount of cash and desperately in need of new business ideas and next practices. So what have they been doing the past 10 years? Buying up more innovative companies and swallowing them whole and trying to digest them. That's pretty much it. And now with the whole idea of chatbot-based AI, of the metaverse, whatever you might make of this, of general AI, when you look at Google and particularly Ray Kurzweil and his sometimes slightly bewildering visions, then there's actually a potential for disruptive innovation for the first time in quite a while from those big players. So it's not surprising in the least that they all rush to make it there first, because it's clearly a winner-take-it-all game. Like it's been with Google, with Facebook, with Amazon, etc. It's still a network economy, right? But that also means they're all focusing on the same thing. On the one hand, like, having like the perfect general AI singularity thing going, particularly on the Google side of things, but also a bit on the Amazon side of things. And on the other hand, go in that route of like intelligent chatbots, language models. And this is hugely innovative. There's gazillions of business applications, from, content creation to search, to, user interaction, customer service, code creation. There's collaboratory solutions, like for, challenging people, moderating workshops, etc. through AI, knowledge management. I mean, it's a very, very powerful approach, but it's only one of the things you can do with AI that is disruptive. And it's one of the most complicated things that takes a lot of capital and work. It's very high level, very highbrow, and very high profile, which means at the same time people overlook much easier approaches that have not less, but at least as much disruptive potential. And that's more of like a hedgehog approach to AI, not trying to, like, solve Fermat's last riddle or Einstein's last equation or whatever, but to look for, like, low-hanging fruits where AI that can be developed by small companies with smart people can make a huge impact here and now, right away, and for everyone, and not just for Microsoft. And that's the domain of AI, where we're not talking about language models that interact with you or intelligent robots or whatever, but where we're basically just talking about glorified statistics and glorified content analysis, stuff that humans can do not quite as well, but nearly as well. But for humans, it's tedious work, very error prone. It takes long, which makes it very expensive too, and burdensome. And when you automate in the data analytics domain about analyzing, understanding content, integrating data, automating processes that can be quantified, running complex statistic calculations, learning from time series, that doesn't sound half as glorious than having a general language model or something like that.
Yeah.
But it saves companies, millions and millions and millions of euros and years of time right now, right here, and with absolutely doable effort. And that's more of our approach to things, because also, to be honest, it's the only approach we can do, because stuff like ChatGPT could never come from a small European player. There's just not even in all of Europe, there wouldn't be enough money around, and probably not enough qualified people as well.
Where would you see AI products with the business benefit? I was thinking about what is forbidden in European areas like medical diagnosis, telehealth. What is allowed is recommendation for online shops, marketing and sales guidance.
They're severely restricting that right now, the EU. They are about to kill that market and basically wipe Europe off the map. Because
with
all that, AI-based individualization, targeting, etc. There's a lot of regulation underway right now that will ruin Europe as a tech market.
Okay.
If you're not going to be passed this way.
I take it you're not in favor of those new rulings.
Well, so I'm absolutely in favor of a robust regulation of AI. I think that's inevitable and essential.
Yeah.
I just wished it was drafted and decided upon by people who have the faintest clue.
Thank you.
AI,
here we go.
And IT and business models.
People coming from a point of intelligence, not from fear.
Yeah, and just being realistic. I mean, if you're looking at those drafts right now at the EU level, the intentions are really good. And I second nearly all of them. But if you delve into detail, then what would that mean in the market? It basically just means going back to the 90s, to be a little bit populistic. And it's not necessarily because that's what the politicians want. It's because there's not much practical experience and competence in those working groups, apparently. Or there is. I would be very surprised if there wasn't, because there's a lot of bright minds in Europe, and a lot of them are politically active too, but apparently they're not listened to because their talk is too complex. I don't know, or it doesn't sound,
we have, for instance, that ethical commission.
Worthy.
Yeah, well, and there was in one of the streaming services or radio stations, HR4 and HR whatsoever, HR1 in Hessische Rundfunk, they did 5 years ago a series on artificial intelligence, what it's capable of, what it could do, what is already used, such as in dark room situations, such as if you have in banking and all these code reading stuff and all, where people are already no longer involved, and it's in completely automation processes involved. I thought that we have, as you said, a setup of brilliant minds which can make themselves understood and explain complex content and rules and regulations and ideas quite sufficient, but I'm afraid they are not integrated in their process, they are not asked for their advice, and they are not yet involved. And that it makes it quite complicated from my perspective. Yeah.
Well, classical problem of the tech community, they think from the technology side of things and not from the use case side of things. And that is, in my view, a key driver behind the success of HASE IGEL, that I don't come from tech. I come from the use case side of things. And there's several of us who come from marketing or from business. We're not like a techie only club. So we have both perspectives. We have the perspective, what can you do from a technology side of things, or what could you do? But we always have the perspectives like, okay, you know, I've worked as a marketing manager for 10 years, or I've worked as a business manager, like in whatever, you know, controlling or something for 10 years.
Yeah.
This is what I would have found really useful. This now, well, it's nice, but I can't really make anything of it. And I think those two sides, they got to come together. And frequently technology, particularly in Europe, particularly in Germany, is debated from an engineering and from a tech side with an utter disregard for the business cases behind it. And when you look at it from a business case perspective, then frequently it's a complete shift, because just a couple of minutes ago, you asked what are like typical business cases in my book, and that would not be in the medical domain or in the engineering domain, because I'm not an expert on these subject matters, but it would be in, like, you know, sales, marketing, purchasing, logistics, and take demand analytics, demand forecasting. If a company has models with which they can predict local demand much more reliably, much more precisely, and much earlier, everybody wins. The company is optimizing their portfolio. They don't have as much unsold products. They don't have any shortages. They got just the right amount of product in just the right place, which also means the customers get what they want. It also means there's less logistic efforts, which also means there's less emissions, there's less waste. It's like everybody wins. The whole economy, the ecology, and business. And what's wrong about that? And it's similar when you look at advertising. It's like, you know, you got that old quote that's always misattributed to Henry Ford. It actually comes from some of the bloke in advertising. I'm not sure, I would have to think for too long who it really was. It wasn't Henry Ford.
It was a guy called Wanamaker.
Yeah, right. You're right. It's like half of my advertising budget are waste. We just don't know which half. This doesn't hold true anymore. If you use AI and big data analytics, you can exactly say which half was waste. And then you can reduce that. You'll always have scattering loss in advertising. That's part of the deal. But if you reduce it from like 50% to like 20%, it's the same thing. You know, customers get more relevant ads and they get less ads overall. The companies spend their budget more efficiently and make more revenue with the same budget. Okay, a couple of intermediaries will be unhappy about that. But generally, for the economy, it's a great thing. For the consumers, it's a great thing. For the companies, it's a great thing. Or take logistics, you know, how much resources do you actually need to serve a certain area? Those are like very hands-on use cases. Or in the content domain, when I was still working in research at Jena University, we were huge teams of people doing content analysis of media to understand how public perception of certain subjects was. This is stuff that you can automate with higher precision, higher quality. You get the results very fast then when you need them, when they are still relevant for your political decision making, not half a year later when the research project has wrapped up eventually. So those are things, you don't need ChatGPT for that, and you don't need Google or Microsoft to come up with that. That's stuff that, you know, 10 people in some tiny office in Oldenburg can do well enough that large international corporations will work with that and be thrilled.
Yeah.
Because they get an immediate ROI.
And you combine this also with ease of use, if I recall right. And you are very keen on delivering value for the money. Yeah. As you simply quoted yourself.
There's a quote by my favorite philosopher. Now that's really cliche for a German guy, Nietzsche. He said,
Okay.
every truth is so abstract, you always have to seduce the senses before people can accept it. And that is so true for anything AI or data related. If you don't make it very sensual and very, easy to experience from a graphics perspective, from a text perspective, from a user interaction perspective, people will just not get it. They won't use it. And if they don't use it, they can't reap the benefits. So good UI design is not just an add-on. It's an absolutely integral, essential part of the product, because you don't have a product if people don't use it.
Yeah.
I think that's why we're talking about what is essentially applied research instead of pure research.
Yeah.
You need to, in business especially, you need to have a reason to be doing a project. You need to have an outcome in mind when you're doing research and development, as opposed to in pure research, you're just following a thread to see where it goes.
But
that only works for other researchers.
But for data and AI, that's frequently not really in focus, like, because they are hyped so much. It's like, yeah, we have a data strategy, we're doing data mining, and we're having AI development. It's like, okay, apparently that's a means, it's an end in itself, but that's stupid. I mean, if you don't have a use case, you don't have a product, and if you're not able to say which decision you want to improve with your AI, which problem you want to solve with data, and you can't really explain how you can solve that better through data or through AI, because maybe you can't. Maybe it's like a culture or political problem and not a problem about facts or data, If you don't have that problem focused and well-defined, you're not going to get any ROI from any data or AI solutions. So you got to develop them with use cases and concrete problems in mind first. And that's frequently not being done right now because of the hype. And then people will hit the wall and be like, we tried out that AI stuff. Turned out it was all bullshit because we lost money. It's like, yeah, you did, but that wasn't because of AI, but it was because you forgot the essentials of business, right? It's like you got to define a use case, a need, a product.
Yeah. And sometimes it's useful to think before you run, such as the Hare and Hedgehog, yes? And this is something of closed-loop thinking in the way. I found it very compelling and very interesting to see that aside of the precise prediction, the easiness of predicting what's coming along and comes true, that the value for money is delivered. You can also assist, if I'm not mistaken, to do smarter segmentation.
Definitely, because we don't need to pry on people, and we don't need to spy on people. The whole idea of collecting all that personal data and cookie-based data and target Marshall and follow him across his every route he's going to take today. That's a thing of the past, luckily, because politics internationally double down on it, and that's been overdue. And you don't need it. It's stupid. You don't need to know if somebody you sell your product to is in love with a guy or with a girl, and his age, and where if he has a leather sofa in his apartment, unless that's relevant. If you want to sell him a leather sofa, you're going to know he likes leather sofas. But for everything else, if you want to sell him a housing credit or so, you don't need to know that. You're much better off understanding that person's behavior, and you can do that perfectly based on anonymous aggregate data with AI, and be like, okay, somebody's having a use case here, he's having a problem. We know that there's a high statistic probability that if we give him this trigger, then that'll then he'll react to that because we have a solution to his problem. And we don't need to know if he's black or white or male or female or whatever. And if he lives in an Art Deco house, it just doesn't matter. So collecting all that data on a personal level is no longer necessary. You can segment much more intelligently and much more ethically.
I applaud this approach as it supports the right of privacy. It helps a lot of marketing organizations, such as the cookieless time it's coming up, and they looking for the cure. Well, if they listen to that video cast and this streaming, they found it. Well, put it that way.
Your song's playing in my mind. With a love
it is that I find it very interesting to see that there is a lot of interesting aspects. We haven't just touched and scratched a bit the tip of the iceberg, and it would be a lot of fun to drill down more, let's say, go for it. And I absolutely agree on the comment that it is entertaining and insightful.
Thank you, Frank.
Thanks for the comment, by the way.
Sorry?
That's a beautiful comment. Thank you very much for it.
I show it again.
With the leg break, not to you, Ralph. But
that simply, I'm happy that Frank made that comment, and it's highly appreciated as it goes in the right direction, which I felt over the last hour. And normally this is a time where I would like to ask for a famous last word statement on your end. If you have one wish free, and I would be your fairy godmother, what would it be, seeing under the perception of what should come true in the development of that very fascinating AI movement and hype?
It has to remain democratic and market-based, and then it's such a beautiful thing. If it turns out to be monopolistic and exclusive, then it's going to be ruinous for all of us, and for democracy and for capitalism.
I applaud this. I think there is nothing more to say than the applaud, and may your wish come true. And then we go backstage. And thank you, all the dear audience, that you stayed so long with us. And thank you for the Merkel heart. Oh, you are fabulous, you two. And I just push now the button